Light Yagami. Before the Death Note, he was the #1 student in all of Japan. But was his genius a gift, or was it a system? What if I told you the 5 core habits that made him an academic god are not only real, but you can copy them? In this video, we're breaking down Light Yagami's entire study system. By the end, you'll have the exact blueprint to study like light and become #1 yourself. Let's get one thing straight. Light Yagami was a genius long before that notebook fell from the sky. The only reason he could outsmart the world's greatest detective wasn't just the Death Note. It was because of the habits he built as an elite student. He had insane problem-solving skills, a crazy good memory, and strategic abilities that let him destroy national exams. The goal here isn't to become a mass-murdering vigilante, please don't do that, but to steal the system that made him so unstoppable in the first place. Most people look at a character like Light and just see an impossible dream. But the truth is, his academic power was built on real, science-backed techniques that anyone can use. These aren't anime powers. They're real-world strategies for deep focus, smart learning, and insane discipline. Now, let's get into it. The first and most important habit is iron discipline. Look, motivation is temporary. It's a little spark that gets you to open a book. But discipline is what keeps you going. Discipline is the engine that pushes you through hours of boring work, day after day. We see this with Light, who stuck to his insane study schedule even while L had him under 24/7 surveillance. He never missed a day. He never let his secret war distract him from his main goal, being the best student. So how do you build this? You start by treating your study time like a meeting you cannot miss. Block out times in your calendar for specific subjects and treat those blocks as non-negotiable appointments with your future self. It's not about finding time to study, it's about making time. Procrastination hates a fixed schedule, so this is your ultimate weapon against it. And this discipline doesn't stop at your desk. One of the most overlooked parts of being #1 is sleep. You can't be a top performer on 4 hours of sleep. Research shows that rest is critical for peak academic performance. Light's lifestyle, though insane, was structured. Getting a full 8 hours of sleep is non-negotiable because being tired tanks your concentration in critical thinking. Real discipline isn't about all-night cram sessions. It's about building a system that makes you a beast for the long haul.
Light's second habit was his crazy ability to enter a state of deep work, absorbing huge amounts of information with ruthless efficiency. Just think about the famous chip bag scene. He's studying for exams, watching the news on a micro TV, and writing names in the Death Note, all while looking like a normal student. We don't recommend that kind of multitasking, but the lesson is his complete elimination of useless distractions. In our world, the enemy of deep focus is your phone. Most students say they study for 4 hours, but really they're checking their phone every 10 minutes. This constant context switching kills your ability to get into a flow state where the real learning actually happens. Light didn't have Instagram notifications, and neither should you. Building this kind of focus requires a ruthless approach. If you're a beginner, try a strict no-device rule for the first 3 hours you're awake. This one simple act builds the mental clarity you need to destroy distractions later. But for those serious about getting to the top, the expert method is to delete social media apps completely, right now. Create a minimalist study space, free of clutter and digital temptations. Your room needs to scream to your brain that it's time to work. Your time is your most valuable resource. Every minute you take back from distraction is a minute you invest in your goals. Light's focus was a weapon. This is where Light really separated himself from everyone else. He didn't just memorize facts, he understood systems and predicted outcomes. He was a strategic thinker, not a boring student. When he was against L, he didn't just react, he thought from L's perspective to predict his moves, like when he manipulated the times of death to trick L. This exact same logic applies to studying. Stop rote learning. Start thinking like your teacher. As you're studying, keep asking yourself, if I were the professor, what questions would I put on the exam? This simple change forces you to go from passive reading to active engagement. You start focusing on the big-ticket concepts that are most likely to show up on the test. Instead of trying to learn everything, you learn the right things. To make this even crazier, use active learning techniques. Don't just read a chapter, explain it to a friend, try to teach it to someone, or turn your notes into a mind map. Mind mapping is a lot like Light's own investigation planning, letting you see how everything connects. This builds a web of knowledge in your brain, not just a boring list of facts. Light wasn't just a good student, he was a detective in his own studies, always asking questions and finding the key details to see the whole picture. That is what makes a #1 student. Academic performance isn't just about what you know. It's about how well you can use that knowledge when the pressure is on. Light's ability to stay perfectly calm while L's cameras were watching his every move is proof of his mental toughness. He kept solving complex problems and executing his plans, all while under crushing scrutiny. This kind of composure is a skill, and you can train it. The best way to build resistance to pressure is to simulate exam conditions. Don't wait for the final to feel that time crunch and anxiety. I challenge you to take mock tests under strict, timed conditions. This gets your brain used to performing in a high-stakes environment. When you feel that panic start to rise, practice controlling your breathing and thinking through problems one step at a time. This also takes willpower. Science has shown that self-discipline can be more important for academic success than IQ. Being a top student means making sacrifices. It might mean saying no to a party to stick to your schedule or pushing through a tough chapter when you'd rather quit. When you consistently choose the harder, more disciplined path, you build the mental toughness needed to stay calm when the pressure is at its highest. That confidence is what keeps you calm when everyone else is panicking. Light Yagami was a master of his environment. Every single thing in his room was placed with a purpose. From the rigged desk drawer to the hidden mechanism for burning the death note, everything was optimized. Your study space and tools should be exactly the same. Start by designing a productivity-first environment. That means a minimalist desk and an ergonomic setup to reduce discomfort and friction. Your workspace should be for work, period. But optimizing your environment also means choosing the right tools. Two of the most powerful science-backed tools for this are Anki and Notion. Anki is a flashcard app that uses a technique called spaced repetition. Instead of cramming, you review information at strategic intervals that get longer over time. The algorithm learns how well you know each card and shows it to you right before you're about to forget it. This process systematically moves information from your short-term to your long-term memory. You can combine this with other advanced techniques. Use chunking to break down huge topics into smaller, manageable groups. Use active recall by constantly quizzing yourself without looking at your notes. Organize all of this in a program like Notion, which can act as your central second brain. When you consciously choose and optimize your tools, you stop being a passive student and become an active architect of your own learning. The core habits are not only real, they are the very foundation of what separates top performers from everybody else. It all comes down to these 5 pillars. The iron discipline to stick to your schedule, the deep focus to work without distraction, the strategic thinking to predict and prioritize, the composure to perform under pressure, and the optimization of your tools and environment. Now go and claim that top spot. This is Peak Razor. Let's build productivity systems that win daily.